Well, we're going to start off with Turkey now. The turmoil continues as the government supporters and opponents hold mass rallies. Thousands of supporters of Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan gathered in the eastern city of Erzurum. Erdogan called on anti-government protesters to end their demonstrations. He accused them of, quote, illegal, unethical behavior. Meanwhile, several thousands of Alawites and rights activists staged a demonstration near Istanbul's Taksim Square, the epicenter of weeks of protests. They condemned Erdogan's authoritarian policies and demanded that he step down. We're going to cross over to Idaho now and speak to Mark Glenn. He's with the Crescent and Cross Solidarity Movement. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Glenn. Now, it seems that Turkey has reached sort of an impasse between the pro-government rallies and Erdogan being staunchly defiant, as opposed to the anti-government rallies that we're seeing centered around Taksim Square. Is this situation even sustainable?
Well, I think that it is sustainable as long as interested parties continue to fuel and to fund this. Even though Erdogan is an immensely unpopular leader amongst his people, nevertheless, we have to consider the possibility, at least, that there are, as Erdogan has recently alleged, that there are outside forces who are helping to fuel this along. Certainly, there would be players on the geopolitical scene who would love to see something like this happen in Turkey, not the least of which would be Syria, because of what Turkey has done to that country now over the last year in assisting these rebels who have destroyed the country. Russia, Iran, other players. But there's also the very distinct possibility that Erdogan has decided at this point that he's not going to be the water boy for NATO and for the United States in launching a war against Syria that may very well involve Russia and that would wind up destroying his own country. And so it's entirely possible that Erdogan has decided that he's not going to do this, and the United States and these other Western powers now have decided to light a fire under his feet by funding these protests that they have done in other Middle Eastern countries now over the last 2 or 3 years.
Right, but Mr. Glenn, evidence on the ground does show that Turkey has been very complacent with U.S. policies with regards to Syria within the region. And it is pretty rich coming from Erdogan when he says that outside forces are at play here when it comes to anti-government protests in Turkey, and yet he does not accept that when it comes to Syria.
Yes, that's exactly right. And as much as we rightly do not look upon Erdogan with any kind of favor given what he has done, at the same time, there's an old saying that a broken clock is right twice a day. And it may very well be that Erdogan, even though he has been very complacent with regards to Western demands vis-a-vis Syria, that the entrance of Russia into this situation has now changed things for him quite a bit, and he has elected, therefore, to not be party to this. Let's not forget that all of these protests began less than 2 weeks after Erdogan was in Washington, D.C., discussing all of these things with Obama. So what was it that he told Obama, possibly, that set this thing in motion and now has blown up in his face?
But what about those that say that that Erdogan's internal policies, so to speak, which basically started off the protests at Taksim Square, are sort of a distraction factor to move away the attention from his policy with regards to Syria and keep the population busy with what's happening inside Turkey, per se?
Well, I don't see these protests as benefiting Erdogan at all. I think that even as much as they may be a diversion and a distraction, I think that they have been absolutely devastating to his public image in Turkey. I don't think that he's happy with these things going on. And at the same time, you know, we do have to, as I said, we have to consider at least the possibility that he has made someone angry, okay? And certainly with his behavior, he has made plenty of enemies all around the world. The question we need to ask ourselves right now is whether or not Erdogan has decided that he is not going to go along with initiating World War III, and that the price for this is that the West is doing to him what they have done to other leaders all over the world, which is to start protests and riots that would bring down the presidency of a puppet who no longer allows himself to be used as a puppet.
All right, we'll see how this pans out. Mark Glenn with the Crescent and Cross Solidarity Movement joining us via Skype from Idaho. Many thanks indeed for your comments here on Press TV, Mr. Glenn.